Warning, listening to this ad may cause sudden cravings and spontaneous happiness. Because at Bedina's eShop, we bake sweet breads so good they've been known to stop arguments, fix bad days, and make your dog think you're the favorite again. From our famous mini loaves to cookies and dog treats, everything's homemade in Amarillo, Texas with real ingredients and a whole lot of Mimi magic. Need a treat for yourself? A peace offering? A bribe for your kids? We don't judge. We just bake. Order at bedinaseshop.com, follow us on Facebook, or catch us at the Golden Spread Farmers Market in Amarillo, Texas. Bedina's eShop, baking happiness and occasionally preventing meltdowns. Link in description. Hello, and welcome to Noetic Resonance. Today we will be discussing the Book of the Giants and the Book of Jubilees. We will be discussing these books and reference them with the Book of Enoch. To start, we'll reference the Book of Enoch and then go more in depth into what happened during the flood. In the Book of Enoch, particularly in the Book of the Watchers, in chapters 6 through 16, and in the Dream Visions, chapters 83 through 84, we get two perspectives on what happened during the flood, both to the Watchers, the fallen angels, and the giants, the Nephilim, and to the earth itself. The following episode explores ancient texts and hidden histories long removed from public view. These revelations may challenge familiar narratives, stir ancestral memory, or awaken dormant truths. Listen with discernment, openness, and grounding, for what was once forbidden is now being remembered. I hope what I share resonates with you as it did with me. Here's what the text actually says, using a mixture of direct quotes from the R.H. Charles translation and contextual explanation. In the pre-flood cleansing decree by the Most High, in 1 Enoch chapters 10 and 11, the Book of the Watchers, after the Watchers' rebellion and the corruption caused by their hybrid offspring, God sends the archangels with very specific instructions to prepare the earth for purification. Step 1 was, the giants must be made to destroy themselves. The quote goes, "And now to the giants, born of the spirits and of the flesh, shall be called evil spirits upon the earth. Let them destroy each other in battle. For length of days shall they not have." This is Enoch 10, 9, and 10. The key insights are, the spirits of the giants are to turn against one another. This pre-flood warfare serves as a divine purpose, to reduce their numbers before the flood even begins, and then they are forbidden long life, with no continuation or redemption. This implies that the violence and chaos among the giants themselves was engineered by divine decree. Infighting ensured that they would wipe each other out. The flood wouldn't be the only purging force. Step 2 is the binding of the Watchers, so they couldn't interfere. The quote in Enoch 10, 4 through 9 says, "Bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert, and cover him with rough and jagged rocks. And the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sin." In Enoch 10, 12, it says, "Bind them for 70 generations under the hills of the earth." So how long is 70 generations was my curiosity. In traditional calculation, Enochian or biblical, a generation in a biblical or ancient Hebraic context is usually counted as 70 to 100 years. In Genesis 6:3, God sets human lifespan to about 120 years, which some also use as a measure. So the most common interpretation is that one generation equals 70 years. 70 generations times 70 years equals 4,900 years. This matches well with many prophetic timelines that span from the fall of the Watchers before the flood to the final judgment or restoration age. If the fall was pre-flood, around 3,000 to 2,500 BCE, depending on your source, then 4,900 years brings you to the 20th or 21st century CE, depending on the dating system you use. Some traditions believe 70 generations is not a strict measure of years, but a Kabbalistic or cosmic cycle symbolizing completion of a full age of human corruption, the length of dominion of the Archons or the Watchers' legacy, or a time capsule of hidden knowledge until humanity awakens. The number 70 itself in mysticism symbolizes judgment, completion, and release, as in Israel's 70-year exile in Babylon. It also is like the 70 nations listed in Genesis 10, meaning all humanity, or the 70 elders of Israel, which is symbolic leadership over time.
In the Sethian Gnostic lens, some interpretations say 70 generations represents the entire rule of ignorance under the false gods and is ended by the appearance of the Revealer, often identified with the Son of Man, the Logos, or Christos Sophia in the Apocryphon of John and other texts. This gives the number esoteric weight, not just time, but a limit placed on deception. The Watchers were bound not forever, but for 70 generations, not a number chosen at random, but one rich with meaning. 70 is the fullness of nations, of silence, of judgment delayed. And if the counting began before the flood, then their silence may be ending in our time. The purpose of the binding of the Watchers was to immobilize them and prevent them from aiding their children, the Nephilim. It ensures they can no longer teach, guide, or influence humanity either. And it prevents any divine intervention from their side that might delay or resist the cleansing that happened during the flood. So in the Book of Enoch, this is a summary of their fate. They're not destroyed, but held for a future day of judgment, as we discussed in the last episode. They are forbidden from interceding. Their once glorious role as heavenly beings is revoked. Enoch 15, 2-10, summed up says, "You shall never obtain peace, nor forgiveness of sin. And now the souls of the righteous who have died are complaining. Their punishment reflects their violation of heavenly law, coming to earth and mating with humans, and their teaching of forbidden knowledge with the warfare, enchantments, cosmetics, and astrology. It makes them shift from heavenly guides to corrupters of humanity and earth." The third step is the cleansing of the earth and the sealing of open portals. In Enoch 10, 7 and 20-22, it says, "Heal the earth which the angels have corrupted. All the children of men shall become righteous, and all the nations shall offer adoration. Then shall the earth be cleansed from all defilement." So these actions include purging of violence, bloodshed, and genetic corruption, sealing off areas where the Watchers descended or where defilement entered the earth, and restoring the earth to a state of balance and purity so that humanity could continue without spiritual infestation. The portals are, number one, gateways between realms. The portals aren't just about sun and moon. They're describing dimensional gates where heavenly forces pass through into the physical world. Some interpretations view them as gateways between heaven and earth, or even between earth and other dimensions. Number two is the portals have influence. There's ideas that energy, time, and influence flow through these cosmic openings, meaning when a portal is open, certain forces are present or intensified. You should think of them like frequency gates through which the seasons of spirit move. Number three is the connection to the corruption of time. In later chapters, especially Enoch 80, it's said that in the days of sinners, the portals would become out of sync. 1 Enoch 80 verse 6 says, "Many chiefs of all the stars shall err, and these shall alter their orbits and tasks, and they shall not appear at the seasons appointed to them." This implies a disruption of cosmic order where the very portals of time and light become distorted due to the rebellion of spiritual beings and humanity's disalignment. In the flood narrative, it hints that the portals were opened and then sealed. It talks about water from above, the firmament probably, and water from below in the abyss pour in. So one of the things that occurred to me whenever I was looking this up, when they talk about waters from below, one of the things that's not widely recognized or talked about is primary water, which is water that comes up out of the earth that nobody really fully understands the source from which it flows. So even science is like, we don't know, it's called primary water. And some interpretations believe that the waters were released through heavenly and earthly portals and then sealed again after the cleansing. Because Genesis 7:11 mirrors Enoch. It says, "The openings of the heaven were opened, and water poured down." This gives the portals a judicial power. They can release judgment or blessing, depending on divine order. There's other mentions of portals too. Portals of fire and light, through which angelic and heavenly beings enter and exit. Portals for the stars, where certain stars are associated with obedience or disobedience, and their movement through portals shows whether they are aligned with divine law. Lastly, there's portals of judgment. Symbolic interpretations sometimes view Enoch's ascension through the portals as passing through initiatory stages of divine knowledge. In Enoch's visions, the cosmos is not chaotic. It is structured, ordered, and pulsing with purpose. The portals are not just poetic. They are the breath between worlds, the hinges of time. And when they're opened or misused, the consequences ripple through the heaven and earth alike. Step 4 of the flood is the spirits of the dead giants becoming evil spirits. In Enoch 15, 8 through 12, it summarizes saying that, "And the spirits of the giants shall be upon the earth. These are the evil spirits. They shall afflict, oppress, destroy, attack. They will corrupt until the day of judgment." Why does this matter? Even though the bodies of the giants are destroyed, their spirits live on as disembodied evil spirits. Later traditions would call these demons. These spirits are not heavenly nor fully human. They are illegitimate hybrids who continue to haunt the earth. This detail explains why the flood alone was not the end of corruption. It was the end of physical corruption, but spiritual consequences remained. In 1 Enoch 15, 8 through 10, it says, "And now the giants who were born from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits among the earth, and their dwelling shall be upon the earth. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, because they are born from men, and from the holy watchers is their beginning and primal origin. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. The spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth." This means that the soul of the Nephilim could not ascend. They were neither fully divine nor fully human. Their disembodied spirits become the original demons, wandering the earth, hungry, malicious, and embittered. These are not fallen angels, but the dead souls of the hybrid offspring. They're demons because they're bodiless and earthbound. They're unable to rest. They're hostile towards humanity, especially righteous or awakened souls. They're drawn to violence, lust, addiction, war, and corruption, and they're agents of disruption, not aligned with divine harmony or cosmic law. They seek possession of bodies to feel again, worship, fear, or influence to regain power, perpetuation of the Watcher's legacy through dark spiritual teaching, and they're often associated with unclean spirits in the New Testament, obsessive thought forms, cults of death, deception, or distortion in many cultures. Many spiritual traditions, especially in Gnostic, Kabbalah, and inner Christian mysticism, teaches that these spirits still attempt to influence minds, sowing doubt, division, addiction, and nihilism. They work through institutions of control, systems of fear, false doctrines, or cultural rot. And they can be dislodged through prayer, ritual, gnosis, and alignment with higher frequencies. They are said to fear true memory, clear intention, and the light of source. In some mystic traditions, these spirits represent the spiritual echo of the world gone wrong, the trauma of a failed hybridization, and an unnatural spark trying to become real by devouring what is. This aligns with their behavior, parasites of the soul, unable to create, only manipulating. To counteract their influence, you can use sacred naming, the vibrational work that I mentioned in episode 2, where we were talking about the Gnostic texts. You can use protective sigils and resonance work. You can have clean environments, physically and spiritually. It is said in many cultures that a cluttered environment brings spirits and chaos into the home. This is where you talk about like feng shui and things of that nature. Also, you can do conscious shadow integration so that they have nothing to feed on. Shadow integration is like basically working through your trauma so that you have inner harmony so that more things aren't coming in that are causing disruption. The Nephilim were more than giants, though. They were the unnatural children of heaven and earth. Their bodies died, but their souls remained hungry, wandering, and hostile. These are the demons who still whisper in shadow, but their weakness is the light of the truth. They fear remembrance, they shrink from resonance, and they flee when the soul reclaims its spark. Some even say these present as disease and parasitic infections, which is extremely interesting to me because I know that there's been scriptures in the Bible that have been straight up taken out that talk about the only way to get rid of some of these is by fasting and casting out and things of that nature. Next, the trees of the earth were uprooted before the flood. 1 Enoch 10:18 through 19 in the R.H. Charles translation says this. The text says, "And destroy all the spirits of the reprobate and the children of the watchers, because they have wronged mankind. Make all the earth without inhabitant and plant. And all the children of men shall become righteous, and all the nations shall offer adoration and shall bless me, and shall worship me. And the earth shall be cleansed from all corruption, and from all sin, and from all wrath, and from all unrighteousness, and all the uncleanliness that was wrought upon the earth shall be destroyed from off the earth. And the children of men shall become just, and all the nations shall offer me adoration." Later in dream visions in Enoch 84, when Enoch recalls his vision of the flood, he says, "And lo, the trees were moved from their places, and loud sounds came out from their roots, and they were uprooted and thrown into the abyss." This could be describing the physical destruction of the forest and ecosystems, massive trees being uprooted by flood waters and swallowed into the abyss or broken earth. The trees may also have been seen as living beings, conscious participants of the earth's cry for justice. Or, as many esoterics like myself see, there are giant trees that have been cut down. You can see the trunks in our landscape now. Some have been admittedly cut down by man, and others they claim are mountains, and people see them as giant trees and such. It does make sense to me whenever I see these big giant plateaus that clearly look like a tree stump, that is where a tree was cut down so that it couldn't be climbed to prepare for the flood, to make sure the Nephilim died. The uprooting of trees signifies that even the deep-rooted aspects of life were disrupted, and that's why the flood needed to come. Some traditions see this as a symbol of spiritual lineage being corrupted, possibly referring to genetic manipulation or the severing of divine-human connection. In other words, the earth wasn't just flooded. It was upturned, uprooted, and reset from the foundation up. There was restoration through a planting in a later vision as well. In later chapters, particularly in the Epistle of Enoch, the image of trees returns, now as symbols of righteousness. In Enoch 93, it says, "And the tree of knowledge shall give life to the righteous and holy." This shows the tree motif come full circle. First, trees are corrupted and uprooted. Then the trees are replanted in the age of restoration. They become symbols of eternal life, justice, and divine order returning. In the books of Enoch 7 through 10, the books of the Watchers, the earth is defiled and cries out. Enoch 7:6 says, "And the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones." The giants consumed all of humanity's resources. They began to devour people. They sinned against birds, beasts, reptiles, and fish, hinting at genetic corruption or misuse of life itself. And then there was the violence and bloodshed that covered the earth, and creation itself began to cry out. In Enoch 9, 1 through 3, it says, "And then Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel looked down from heaven and saw much blood being shed upon the earth. And the souls of men made their suit, saying, 'Bring our cause before the Most High.'" And Enoch's telling the flood was not simply a punishment, it was a mercy to a weeping earth. And though the giants perished, the watchers were bound but not destroyed. Their shadows linger, waiting beneath, as time turns towards judgment once again. In one tradition, the flood was a righteous cleansing. In another, it was a trap, a reset orchestrated by jealous rulers to drown out divine memory. The archons weren't trying to save the earth. They were trying to reshape it, to silence the voice of Seth and suppress the spark of Sophia. But the light could not be drowned. A remnant remembered, and that memory still speaks through those who are awakening. The ultimate fate of the Nephilim demons, the disembodied spirits of the giants, is destruction at the final judgment, according to the Book of Enoch and various apocryphal and esoteric traditions. Let's trace exactly what's said in the ancient texts and how that has been interpreted. So in 1 Enoch 15:12 through 16:1, it says, "But these spirits shall not rise up in judgment with men, nor shall they be raised from the dead. These spirits shall be hidden and not rise up against the children of men until the day of consummation, the great judgment in which the age shall be consummated." 1 Enoch 10:13 says, "Destroy all the spirits of the reprobate and the children of the watchers, because they have wronged mankind." This means the Nephilim spirits are denied resurrection. They are trapped as disembodied entities, wandering and suffering. They will persist on earth until the day of judgment, unable to ascend or reincarnate. And on that day, they will be destroyed or cast into eternal fire, just like their watcher fathers. They are essentially cut off from both heaven and humanity, a third state of being that ends in obliteration. Gnostic texts like the Apocryphon of John or the Book of the Great Invisible Spirit reinterpret these spirits not always as Nephilim per se, but as archontic offspring or shadow beings that feed on the ignorance of mankind, attempt to keep souls bound in the material realm, and are destined to burn in the consuming fire of truth. They often burn not as punishment, but as a consequence of exposure to pure light. They simply cannot withstand it. In Gnostic traditions, it's said that the Nephilim will be burned in the light of the pleroma or scattered like smoke upon the awakening of humanity. The Nephilim demons, born of corruption, wander the earth as shadows of what never should have been. But their time is not endless. In the fullness of judgment, they too shall be unmade, not simply destroyed, but dissolved by the light they cannot bear. Their end is not wrath, it is remembrance. So we now come to where this ties into the Book of Jubilees and the Book of the Giants. First, we walk the righteous path through the Jubilees, where time is measured, memory preserved, and the descent begins. Then we descend into shadow, where the children of giants dream of their destruction and cry out to Enoch for answers that never come. What is the Book of Jubilees? The Book of Jubilees is also known as Little Genesis. It's a 2nd century BCE Jewish text that retells the narrative of Genesis and parts of Exodus, but adds significant details, rewrites portions, and frames everything in a sacred cosmic calendar of Jubilee cycles, periods of 49 years. It was likely composed around 150 to 100 BCE during the Second Temple period. It's used and preserved by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church as canonical scripture. And from what I understand, Ethiopian Orthodox Church has like the most comprehensive, still intact scriptures that they follow, which is really interesting. Anyways, it presents itself as a revelation given to Moses by angels while he was on Mount Sinai, revealing the true history of the world hidden from humanity. The Book of Jubilees is structured chronologically by Jubilee cycles, with sections that correspond roughly to Genesis 1 through Exodus 12. To start, we have creation in Jubilees 1 through 2. These are the 4 key features added in the Book of Jubilees 2 that goes beyond what Genesis offers. The first thing is a precise calendar framing. Each act of creation is tied to a specific day in a cosmic calendar. It introduces a 360-day solar calendar as the divinely ordained cycle, which is interesting because even in the Book of Enoch, it talks about divine calendar and structure and time and stuff like that. The creation story is no longer just a sequence. It becomes part of a sacred measurement of time. The second thing is the early creation of angels and cosmic beings. Angels of various types, presence, sanctification, and elemental forces are said to be created on the first day. This is not in Genesis 1, but is central to Enochian and mystical cosmology. It establishes that the heavenly host existed before humanity. Their tasks were already assigned. The third thing is the use of heavenly tablets. All events are said to be recorded on heavenly tablets, a divine archive. This adds predestined and eternal quality to creation and future history. It's a way of saying everything is already known, ordered, and timed. The fourth thing is the exaltation of the Sabbath. The Sabbath is not just a day of rest. It is a holy institution established in heaven. Angels themselves are said to observe and sanctify it. The Sabbath becomes a cosmic law woven into the structure of creation. So breaking these down, when it comes to the creation of the angels happening first, in Jubilees 2:2 it says, "For on the first day he created the heavens and all the spirits who serve before him, angels of presence, angels of holiness, angels of spirit, of fire." This is not mentioned in Genesis 1, but central to Enochian cosmology, like I said. The angels are created before humanity and assigned roles in cosmic service, nature, and judgment. When it talks about the calendar, the days of creation are explicitly dated using the Jubilee system. The solar year is said to be perfect and divinely ordered, while lunar calendars are implied to be corruptions. This was a major distinction between the Qumran Essene groups and the mainstream priesthood. Jubilees 2:9 says, "And all the days which shall be commanded shall be written on the heavenly tablets." When it comes to the Sabbath as a cosmic law, the Sabbath is created with the cosmos, not added later. It's kept by God, angels, and eventually humans. And breaking it is portrayed as violating the fabric of creation. Jubilees 2:19 says, "And he gave it to the children of Israel, that they should guard it with all of their hearts." This is a heaven-earth synchrony theme. Creation itself is a rhythm, and humans must realign to that rhythm. Jubilees emphasize order over narrative. Everything is scheduled, aligned, and intentional. Time is not just linear, but sacred structure. This aligns closely with Enoch, Essene, and priestly mysticism. Angels and cosmic forces are active from day one, reinforcing the idea of a living, populated, intelligent cosmos. The entire book is framed as a divine revelation to Moses. In Jubilees 1, we're told, while Moses was on Mount Sinai, he receives a vision from the angel of the presence. The angel dictates a heavenly record of history, from creation to the giving of law. This sets Jubilees apart from Genesis. It's not just narrative, it's divinely narrated sacred history. Jubilees 1:4-5 says, "Set your heart on every word that I shall speak to you on this mountain. For I am giving you the law and the commandment which the Lord wrote for the children of Israel." This mirrors the idea of a divine memory transmission aligned with themes of gnosis, remembrance, and restoration. In Jubilees 1:9-23, God prophesies that after entering the promised land, Israel will turn away from the covenant. They will worship idols, break the Sabbath, and forget the law. But in the final days, a generation will return, seek God's face, and remember the covenant. Jubilees 1:24 says, "Then they shall cry out to me, and I shall remember the covenant, and raise up to them a plant of righteousness." This plant of righteousness is interpreted by many as a messianic figure or a righteous remnant like a Sethian or Enochian line. This sets up a cosmic arc of order, rebellion, exile, remembrance, and restoration. Some people talk about this plant, though, as a portal, or that it's an actual plant that has been given to man. Some consider mushrooms like amanita or the psilocybin known as the flesh of the gods. Ayahuasca, called La Purga or vine of the soul, blue lotus, acacia, mimosa are associated with inner vision and awakening, or even cedar, myrrh, or hyssop used in ancient temple rites. It's really interesting to me because it really reminds me of the mycelial network, which often people call the Wood Wide Web, which is funny. But anyways, the mycelium is the vast underground web of fungal threads, hyphae, that connects plants, trees, soils, organisms, and microbes. So like the whole world is literally connected by these myceliums. So all these plants that I just mentioned would be falling underneath that. And so to me, it would make perfect sense that a plant of righteousness is not just merely a metaphor, but a living ally that helps return humanity to remembrance, alignment, and truth, especially in a time when the sacred calendar and cosmic order were corrupted. And also, so many people are using mushrooms, especially along with the other ones, to, heal their body, their mind, their soul, and to receive visions and downloads. I cannot go on enough about how interesting this particular part is to me personally. Anyways, so the angels of wind and fire, the spirits of seasons and stars, these were no mere symbols. They were part of the tapestry of living consciousness that once governed time and earth in balance. And when that balance was broken, it was the plant of righteousness, whether prophet, remnant, or sacred ally, that would awaken those who remembered. The Cathari were among them, and they still are. While the calendar was already mentioned, it's worth stressing again. Jubilees treats it as a divinely mandated pattern. Later in Jubilees, but rooted in chapter 2's framing, it said, there will be those who will observe the moon and corrupt the seasons and come out with incorrect days. That's in Jubilees 6:36 through 38 summarized. This is a veiled criticism of the lunar calendar adopted by mainstream Judaism after the Babylonian exile, and possibly the calendar used by the Archon's priesthood in Gnostic interpretation. The correct calendar was heavenly, solar, and aligned with the angels, a rhythm of light, not shadow. This calendrical defilement is seen as a key source of corruption in the fallen world. Though subtle, Jubilees names distinct types of angels, all created on day 1. From Jubilees 2:2, on the first day, God creates angels of presence, those who stand before the throne of God, angels of sanctification who carry out consecration and sacred tasks, and angels over natural forces, the spirit of fire, wind, cold and heat, spirits of the seasons, and of the sun, moon, stars, and luminaries of heaven. These aren't metaphorical. They are treated as literal spiritual beings tasked with governing the elements of creation. And to me, whenever I saw this, I was like, this is really interesting whenever it comes back to Greek and Roman gods and the ones that have been renamed through time, but are literally always speaking about the same entities. Because you have the spirit of fire, which is Helios, the spirit of wind, which is Boreas, the spirit of the seasons, which is Hore, the spirit of cold and heat, which aren't directly personified in Greek myth, but are related to elemental gods. And the sun and moon and stars, we have the Helios, Selene, and Estrius. These elemental angels sound very much like cosmic administrators, divine intelligences governing natural rhythms, akin to demigods or minor gods in the Greco-Roman world. These are cosmic functionaries, not just messengers. Across Enoic, Jubilees, Mesopotamian, Greek, and later mystical traditions, humans receive instructions from angels or divine intelligences. They were taught calendars, agriculture, medicine, metallurgy, and ritual, and they encountered beings in visions, dreams, altered states, and sacred places, which, again, that all matches up with some of them plants. Just saying. In the Book of Jubilees and the Book of Enoch, angels speak directly to Enoch and Moses. They instruct, warn, and correct, and they reveal cosmic order. Did they walk among the people? In ancient understanding, sometimes, but not always materially. There are 3 ways this was understood historically. Number 1, they embodied appearance. Some traditions, especially in Hebrew and Mesopotamian, believe divine beings could take temporary physical form, appear as travelers, teachers, or men of renown, and interact briefly and then depart. This is the model you see echoed in Genesis with visitors, messengers, or men. The second way is liminal presence. More commonly, they are believed to appear at thresholds, mountains, temples, groves, gates, and inhabit sacred architecture and boundary spaces. And they walk in the sense of moving through realms, not streets. This is where buildings matter. Those figures on buildings that I mentioned previously in my first episode when I first started my journey, they aren't decorations in the original sense. They're markers. Markers of forces, principles, intelligences tied to that place. And the third thing is, in later mystical traditions, the understanding shifts. The beings no longer walk outside humanity. They awaken within receptive individuals. This is where the plant of righteousness, prophets, seers, and mystics come in. Were they worshipped? This is where the Jubilees draws a hard line. In Jubilees, these beings are administrators, not gods. They're governed forces, not souls. They are never to be worshipped. That distinction matters. Greek culture personified and worshipped them. Hebrew tradition recognized but subordinated them. Same intelligences, different cultural relationship. Ancient peoples believed the world was alive with intelligences of wind, fire, seasons, and stars. They spoke with them through dreams, ritual, and sacred places. Over time, those encounters moved from outer appearance to inner knowing. What remains today are the symbols, waiting for those who remembered how to read them. This builds out a cosmology of intelligent forces, a world where everything from wind to stars is governed by divine beings. This reinforces themes about the sentience of nature and the intelligent structure of the cosmos. While Genesis simply says a man was created in God's image, Jubilees emphasizes that humanity is the climax of creation, made to keep the Sabbath and to rule rightly in God's image. Jubilees 2:19-20 says, "And the Creator of all things blessed it, but he did not sanctify all the peoples and nations to keep the Sabbath, only Israel." This is tied to the concept that only the righteous can walk in alignment with the cosmic law. But in deeper readings, this Israel may symbolize not a nation, but a spiritual line of memory keepers, like the Sethians or Cathari. In Jubilees, creation is not only cosmic, it's calendrical. Time itself is born alongside light and land. Angels move with the first breath of the heavens, and the Sabbath is not just a day. It is a law of the cosmos, a rhythm etched in the bones of the world. Next is the fall of the angels and the Nephilim. In Jubilee 5. Jubilees 5:1 begins by saying, "And it came to pass, when the children of men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, that the angels of God saw them on a certain year of this Jubilee, and took them wives of all whom they chose." This is a direct echo of Genesis 6:1-2 and 1 Enoch 6-7. The angels of God are clearly understood as watchers, just like in Enoch. The act of taking human wives is framed as rebellion, a violation of cosmic law. In Jubilees 5:2, it says, "And they bare unto them sons, and they were giants. And the lawlessness increased on the earth, and every imagination of thoughts of all men was thus evil continually." This passage shows the giant's existence equals destabilization of creation. Jubilees 5:6 says, "And against the angels whom he had sent upon earth, he was exceedingly wroth, and he gave commandment to root them out of all their dominion. And he bade us to bind them in the depths of the earth, and behold, they are bound in the midst of them, and are kept separate." Meaning the angels are punished, just like in 1 Enoch 10-14. God commands that they be stripped of dominion and bound in the earth. He bade us to bind them, implies the holy angels carrying out the binding. This shows that Jubilees confirms the tradition of the Watcher's imprisonment until judgment. While less detailed than Enoch, Jubilees 5:2-6 makes clear the giants are wiped out in the flood. Their existence is inseparable from the cause of the flood. Unlike Enoch, Jubilees does not dwell on their spirits becoming demons, but it does strongly echo the consequences of their corruption. Jubilees 5:11-12 says, "And he sent his sword into their midst, that each would slay his neighbor. And they began to slay each other till they all fell by the sword, and were destroyed from the earth." This mirrors Enoch 1:9-10, where the giants are made to destroy each other before the flood. Some of these ties are why I saved that part of Enoch for this episode, because the flood is really where it ties into these other books. The flood is then described as the divine act to cleanse the earth from the corrupted seed and lawless spirits. Jubilees confirms what Enoch unveiled. The watchers fell, the giants rose, and the earth cried out. Before the flood washed the surface, the giants fell by their own hands, and the angels who bore them were sealed in shadow. The storm that followed wasn't chaos, it was the reset. In Jubilees 5:2-3, it says, "All their thoughts were evil continually. All flesh had corrupted its way." This echoes Genesis 6:12 and supports a deep idea that carried in apocryphal and Gnostic texts. Not just humans were corrupted, but the animals and nature itself. Some traditions claim the Watchers even tampered with animals, trying to manipulate creation through unnatural mixes, a hidden allusion to early biomagic and genetic corruption. And it does make sense whenever you think about the ideas of like manticores and things like that, and where did they come from? Obviously, at some point, they actually existed. I mean, and of course, that's just my personal opinion. The symbolic implication is that when the template of life itself is corrupted, even nature loses its harmony. And it's not just sin, it's ontological disruption. In Jubilees 5:19, it says, "Only Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord." This line anchors a powerful theme. One righteous man whose spiritual memory was intact carried the template of renewal forward. He becomes a seed of remembrance and a vessel of right alignment. This is the same archetype reflected in Enoch before him, Moses after him, the Sethian lineage, and in mystical terms, anyone today who remembers, resists distortion, and seeks restoration of sacred balance. The law is eternal, though, even before Sinai. Jubilees frames the judgment in chapter 5 not just as a moral issue, but a violation of eternal law. Jubilees 5:5 says, "For this reason, he said that he would destroy everything from the face of the earth. The watchers, giants, and corrupted men are judged not for just disobedience, but for violating the created order." Jubilees' core claim is that the law existed before Moses. It was known by Enoch, Noah, and the patriarchs, written on heavenly tablets. In esoteric terms, it's not law like human rules, it's resonant order, a pattern that life must follow to remain in alignment. The text says that God sent his sword to begin the judgment before the flood. Before the waters rose, the sword fell. The giants turned on one another, not just in rage, but in unraveling. The corruption ran so deep it touched the roots of nature itself, but still a seed of righteousness remained, and in that seed, the memory of balance endured. In Jubilees 6-10, it covers after the flood. So after the waters recede, Noah makes offerings on the altar. God makes a covenant with Noah and his sons, similar to Genesis 9, but with new layers. There's no more global flood, the rainbow is a sign, and the law is written on heavenly tablets. A major theme, again, is the correct solar year calendar. It's 364 days, not 354 like the lunar. And it warns that corrupt men will observe the moon and fall out of alignment. It says those who follow the lunar calendar will miss sacred days, Sabbaths, and festivals. Jubilees 6:36 says they will go wrong as to the beginnings of the months and seasons and Sabbaths and Jubilees and all the ordinances of the years. Keeping divine time is spiritual alignment. Misaligning time equals forgetting heaven's rhythm. In Jubilees 7, Noah instructs his descendants not to eat blood or flesh torn from living animals. The Noahide laws are laid out after a foundation for righteous living after the flood. According to Jubilees 3:4 and other early chapters, "And the Lord God took the man and fed him in the Garden of Eden with all manners of trees, sweet-smelling and good for food. And the food of the tree gave him the bright knowledge." This implicates that Adam and Eve were vegetarian, eating only fruit and plant life in Eden. The killing of animals was associated with sin and violence. Jubilees 3:26 says, "And he gave Adam and his wife garments of skin and clothed them, and he sent them forth from the Garden of Eden." This means that the first animal killing was not for food, but for covering sin and shame, linking the animal death to the fall of man. Jubilees 6:2-4 records that Noah was the first to be granted permission to eat meat, but even then it's conditional. Jubilees 6:1-4 and 7:1-2 is summarized as saying, "And on the new moon of the 3rd month he went forth from the ark and built an altar. And he took a kid and made atonement by its blood. And he gave him permission to eat all flesh. However, that meat had to be from clean animals only and drained of blood, for consumption of blood was forbidden, and it must be offered with thanksgiving and ritual purity." Abraham is praised for not eating the blood of animals and strictly observing the dietary laws. Jubilees 23:10 says, "Abraham was perfect in all of his deeds with the Lord, and did not eat blood, and did not transgress any of the commandments." There's a prophetic tone in later chapters warning that in the end times, people will be corrupt by eating unclean things. Jubilees 23:17 says, "And they will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh." This is condemned alongside idolatry and lawlessness. Eating blood or unclean animals is seen as a sign of degeneration. Jubilees 7:20-21 says, "And in the 28th Jubilee, Noah began to enjoin upon his sons the ordinances and commandments, and he commanded them to eat no blood, for the life of all flesh is in the blood, and you shall not eat the blood, that your names may not be covered with the blood upon your faces." Jubilees 7:28 says, Eat no blood whatsoever, nor the flesh of animals that died of themselves or were torn by wild beasts, for their judgment is death. They shall be destroyed and perish on the earth. This passage connects eating blood or improperly prepared meat with spiritual defilement and judgment. While there's not an outright ban on meat, it's a strong warning about how it must be treated, with reverence, purification, and never consumed with blood. In Jubilees 21:7, it says, "Eat no blood at all, for the life of all flesh is in blood, lest your name be cursed and your whole seed be destroyed from the earth." And Jubilees 21:10 and 11 said, "And if any man eats blood, it shall be cut off from among the people. And do not eat any animal that has died of itself or been torn by beasts, and do not eat any blood at all." While the Book of Jubilees allows clean meat post-flood, it strongly idealizes pre-flood lifestyle in which no animals were harmed. The Edenic standard, where humans eat only fruits and grains, is considered holier. The implication is that returning to that state is a more righteous path. In Jubilees 23:17 and 18, it says, "And in those days the children shall begin to study the laws and seek the commandments, and they shall eat blood with all flesh." So Noah learns from the angels. The key passages is that Noah learns herbal remedies and spiritual warfare practices from the angels, especially to combat the spirits of the Nephilim, the demons. It reflects what we see in 1 Enoch 8, but flipped, where the watchers taught corruption, now the holy angels teach healing. This is a direct passage from Jubilees 10 through 12 in the Charles translation. "And the sons of Noah came to Noah their father, and they told him about the demons which were leading astray and blinding the killings of his sons. And he prayed before the Lord his God and said, God of spirits of all flesh, deliver me and my sons from evil spirits who have dominion over them. And the Lord our God spoke to us so that we might bind all of them. And the chief of the spirits, Mastema, came and said, Lord Creator, let some of them remain before me, and let them listen to my voice, and do all that I say to them. And he said, let 1/10 of them remain before him, but let 9 parts descend into the place of condemnation. So already we have evil spirits originating from the Nephilim, corrupting and harming mankind. God grants Mastema, the adversary figure, permission to keep 1/10 of them active on earth. The rest are bound, echoing themes also found in Enoch. Then this key moment follows. Jubilees 10:12 through 14, there's herbal wisdom revealed. And we explain to Noah all the medicines of their diseases together with their seductions, how he might heal them with the herbs of the earth. And Noah wrote down everything in a book as we instructed him concerning every kind of medicine. Thus the evil spirits were precluded from hurting the sons of Noah. What's especially powerful here is that the herb is given as a remedy to the chaos unleashed by the Watchers and their offspring. After spiritual corruption enters the world, God, through the angels, brings back harmony by returning natural, earth-grown medicines. This implies that healing is part of divine justice, and nature is a sacred ally. True medicine is revealed, not invented, and aligns with creation's original order. This is a rare sacred moment where spiritual knowledge is returned to humanity, not stolen or corrupted. In chapter 8, Kainam finds the writing of the Watchers. Jubilees 8:1 through 5 says, And a son was born to Arpachshad, and his name was Kainam. And the son grew, and his father taught him writing. And he went to seek for himself a place where he might seize for himself a city. And he found a writing which former generations had carved on the rock. And he read what was thereon, and he transcribed it, and sinned owing to it. This is one of the most critical passages. Kainam, or Canaan, a post-flood descendant of Noah, finds ancient stone inscriptions. These writings are attributed to the Watchers, the fallen angels from the Book of Enoch, who revealed forbidden knowledge before the flood. Kainam reads and copies them, and sins because of it. The same corrupted knowledge that led to the downfall of the pre-flood world is now leaking back in, reactivating dangerous currents of power. This is a pivotal moment in the war between true divine law and corrupt occult knowledge. In Jubilees 8:10, it talks about, And Noah began to enjoin upon his sons the ordinances and commandments, and he divided the earth into 3 parts. This is where Noah divides the earth among his sons. Shem gets the Middle East and Asia from Euphrates to India. Ham gets Africa and parts of the southern regions, and Japheth gets the northern lands like Europe and beyond. These divisions are recorded and sworn over in blood, and later chapters warn not to cross into one another's inheritance, or judgment will follow. This matters because Jubilee treats land inheritance as sacred, not just geography, but frequency and spiritual responsibility. The rest of the chapter maps out the territorial lines with the ancient names of rivers, mountains, and regions. Noah's instructions are said to come with heavenly approval, and to break these agreements is to call down judgment. Some esoteric readers interpret this chapter as a warning about reclaiming lost technologies or ancient knowledge without wisdom or permission. The Watcher's writings might symbolize advanced technology, forbidden frequencies, astral teachings misused, or alchemy, sorcery, or genetic manipulation. Kainam's mistake was not just curiosity, it was using sacred power outside divine timing, which opened a door. This isn't just geography, it's energy territory, a sacred grid. Boundaries are cosmic assignments, not just land rights. Breaking those boundaries later, like the Tower of Babel or Conquest, brings judgment. This ties in with ley lines, ancient cities, and sacred centers, matching many people's belief in energy hubs and corrupted architecture. Manipulating maps and land names isn't just about borders. It's about disconnecting people from their true history, their ancestral memory, and even the energetic layout of the earth. Herein comes how they've distorted our geography. They've changed ancient place names. Many ancient sacred sites have been renamed or buried under colonial, nationalistic, or fabricated histories. For example, lands once called Shem's, Ham's, or Japheth's dominions, as in Jubilees 8, are now overwritten with artificial political zones. The second thing they do is they suppress ancient world maps. Maps like Piri Reis, Mappa Mundi, or early TO maps show Antarctica without ice, different pole alignments, and strange land masses that don't match modern maps. Older maps often reflected energetic truths like ley lines and celestial alignments, not just physical geography. Number 3 is they use false scaling, the Mercator projection. The commonly used Mercator projection massively inflates Europe and North America while shrinking Africa, South America, and other equatorial lands. This isn't just a mathematical choice, it creates a physiological illusion of importance and power. Africa is 14 times larger than Greenland, but on most maps, they appear similar in size. Number 4 is they obscure ley lines and sacred sites. Cities and monuments were originally placed on ley lines and energetic nodes, but those patterns have been hidden or remapped. When people are disconnected from the Earth's grid, they lose access to natural resonance and spiritual grounding. The Earth's original layout was meaningful. Our ancestors knew how to read the land, the stars, and the flow of energy between the two. Sacred texts like Jubilees contain coded references to that true layout, including where each lineage was meant to live and steward. When we reclaim sacred geography, we reclaim our place, our power, and our path. So in chapter 9, each son is given his portion in a formal way, now sealed with a blood oath and recorded in the heavenly book. Jubilees 9:14 says, "Accursed be he who transgresses the boundary and causes others to do so. Let him be cursed forever." Noah blesses his sons, but especially elevates Shem. Jubilees 9:6 echoes Genesis 9:26, saying, "Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and may the Lord dwell in the dwelling of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant." Shem is the ancestor of Abram, the Hebrews, and all spiritual teachers of the Abrahamic line. This blessing is tied to divine presence, saying, "May God dwell in the tents of Shem," meaning sacred knowledge and the revelation would pass through his line. Canaan, Ham's son, is cursed for defying the oath. Here's one of the most telling parts. Jubilees 9:13 and 14 says, "But Canaan saw the land of Lebanon and the river of Egypt, and that it was very good. And he went not into the land of his inheritance, but dwelt the land of Shem. And Ham his father said unto him, Do not dwell in the dwelling of Shem, for to Shem and his sons did it come by their lot. Yet Canaan disobeys, And because of that, he's cursed to be Canaan, and let this be his inheritance, that he shall be a servant. This echoes Genesis 9 curse of Canaan. But here in Jubilees, the reason is clearer. Canaan violated the sacred boundary line. These divisions were divinely ordained and sworn upon in blood, not to be violated, as I've said. This chapter hits deep because modern geopolitics has completely trampled this ancient map, and many of the world's deepest conflicts are rooted in people living where they never were meant to live energetically, not just politically. And there's a violation of sacred lands, and they forget the stewardship roles each lineage was meant to play. We are absolutely right to be frustrated. They've hidden the true map, and in doing so, they've blinded generations of people. Jubilee 9:15 says, "Cursed be he that opened that which hath been closed." Opening what was closed or crossing spiritual boundaries is treated as a serious transgression and a repeated theme in ancient destruction myths. In Jubilees 10:13 through 17, "And Noah rejoiced that his portion came forth from Shem, and he blessed the Lord God of gods." This chapter closes with the descendants of Noah settling into their territories, Noah offering thanksgiving and blessing for Shem's portion, and a reference to Shinar, Babel, where the men begin building the tower, setting the stage for chapter 11. This is where we reach the Tower of Babel and the division of the earth in Jubilees 8 through 10. This section introduces the land of Shinar, where the people begin to dwell and eventually try to build a tower. Jubilees 10:20 says, "And they began to build, and in the 4th week they made brick with fire, and the bricks served them for stone, and the clay with which they cemented them was asphalt, which comes out of the sea, and out of the fountains of water in the land of Shinar." This adds details not in Genesis. Asphalt was used to bind the bricks. There are specific references to the 4th week of the Jubilee suggesting precise timing and order. And the tower was meant to reach the heavens, just like in Genesis. But Jubilee ties it more directly to human pride and rebellion. Jubilees 10:21 says, "And they said, Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower, and let its top reach to the heaven, and we will make ourselves famed so that we may reign upon the whole world." This clarifies that the motive was to dominate, not just build, but they sought global control and glory. In Jubilees 10:22 through 26 is God's response. "And the Lord our God said unto the angels, Behold, they are one people, and they begin to do. Now I will send a mighty wind against the tower and overthrow it from the air." This adds layers. God commands the angels to act, showing heavenly coordination. A mighty wind is sent to destroy the tower from above. This imagery suggests divine breath or spirit force, not just lightning or earthquake. God confuses their tongues, just like in Genesis, but in Jubilees, he also scatters them by name and region, and thus they were scattered into 70 nations according to their tongues and families. In Jubilees 11, 1 through 6, is the legacy of Babel. The next chapter picks up after the fall, and the building of the tower was stopped, and they called the name of the place Babel, for the Lord confused all the tongues of the children of the men there. It is important to note that the Jubilees later speak of prideful kings emerging from the nations scattered after Babel, some of whom reconnect with the spirits and corruption of the pre-flood world. Many believe the Tower of Babel was more than building. It was a spiritual technology to pierce the realms, possibly an attempt to re-enter the heavenly domain similar to what the Watchers had done, and a centralization of power and artificial unity rather than natural sacred diversity. In that sense, modern parallels like technocratic globalism, false spiritual systems, or centralized control might be seen as neo-Babels. The tower was meant to reach into the heaven, but symbolically this means it was designed to replace the true axis mundi, the world axis or cosmic connection between the realms like Mount Muru, Mount Zion, or the primordial trees in many myths. But Babel wasn't aligned with divine will. It was man-made, built with brick and bitumen, not sacred stone, and powered by ambition and fear of dispersion, not harmony. So instead of being a bridge of light, it became a monument of ego and control. In Jubilees 10:26, the tower is destroyed by a mighty wind, not an earthquake or fire. This mighty wind may represent the Ruach, divine breath or spirit, a cleansing force from the upper realms, or a reminder that divine unity is breathed, not built. Babel was a blueprint for Babylon. Babel, Hebrew Bavel, literally means gate of God. Bab, gate, El, God. Ironically, it becomes associated with confusion, Balal, in the biblical narrative. This shows that a name meant to represent ascension becomes a curse. When the tongues were scattered, something much deeper was lost. The original resonance-based language, possibly a language of light, vibration, or direct knowing. The soul's universal speech, telepathic, harmonic, frequency-based, and Jubilees implies that each tribe retained a tongue connected to their inheritance. Some Gnostic and mystic streams teach that the pure tongue will be restored in the end times, when the fragments return and the tower within us is redeemed. Babel is not just history, it's a pattern, a spiritual structure that keeps rebuilding itself unless consciously dismantled. Next is Abraham's life and teachings in Jubilees 11 through 23. It talks about the Tower of Babel being destroyed, languages confused, and people scattered. Evil returns, cities are built, idolatry begins again, and demons increase their influence. Abram, or Abraham, is born to Terah, son of Nahor. Abraham's early life begins in a world filled with idols and astral worship. Corruption resurges after Babel, and the war between light and shadows continues through the bloodlines. At 14, Abram starts questioning idols. He prays for truth and asks the Creator to reveal himself. Abram rejects the star and moon worship practiced by his father's house. In Jubilees 12:19, he says, "O Lord, deliver me from the hands of evil spirits who have dominion over thoughts of men's hearts." God responds to Abraham's prayer, confirms that he will be the chosen line. This chapter shows the awakening of divine consciousness within a corrupted world order. Abraham is the soul who remembers. In chapter 13, Abram is told to leave Haran and go to Canaan, which is echoed in Genesis 12. God promises to bless him and multiply his seed. Lot, Abram's nephew, travels with him. Abram builds altars and offers animal sacrifices in the correct calendar rhythm. This begins the establishment of a covenant relationship through sacred timing and movement. In chapter 14, he has a vision of the covenant. Abram performs the covenant sacrifice of animals as commanded, and he receives a vision of the future, the fate of his descendants, their enslavement in Egypt, and eventual liberation. Jubilees 14:13 through 17 is summarized saying, "Know of a surety that your seed will be a stranger in a land not theirs." God explains this because they will turn from the holy path. This is where the covenant of the pieces happens. Heaven literally opens to show past, present, and future. This vision seals Abram as a prophetic vessel, now fully aligned with divine will. In chapter 15, we have circumcision and the everlasting covenant. Abram becomes Abraham, and Sarai becomes Sarah. God establishes circumcision as a sign of the eternal covenant. The promise is given. Sarah will bear Isaac, the chosen son. Ishmael is blessed, but not chosen as heir of the covenant. Circumcision is tied to the 8th day, aligning with divine cycles. This chapter reflects Genesis 17, but Jubilees adds clarity on the calendar and covenantal meaning. The physical covenant now mirrors the spiritual, body and spirit aligned in holy order. In chapter 16, angelic visitors confirm Sarah will give birth to Isaac. Abraham rejoices and begins observing festival times as heavenly beings do. Sodom's corruption is mentioned. Their crimes are more than just sexual. They devour the poor, enslave the weak, and defile the earth's balance. Judgment is declared. Sodom represents a distortion of divine hospitality and justice, the opposite of Abraham's path. In Jubilees 16:5 and 6 comes the cry of the earth again. And in the middle of the 6th month, the Lord visited Sarah and did unto her as he had spoken. And the Lord said, Verily Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son. At the same time, and in those days, the Lord brought a plague upon Sodom and Gomorrah and Zeboim and all the region of the Jordan. And he burned them with fire and brimstone and destroyed them until this day, even as, lo, I have declared unto thee all their works, that they are wicked and sinners exceedingly. Here, Jubilees confirms the same fiery judgment as in Genesis, but adds an energetic and moral explanation. And sinners exceedingly, that they defile themselves and commit fornication in their flesh and work uncleanness on the earth. This goes beyond personal sin or interpersonal violence. This is violation of earth itself, implying energetic defilement. possibly ritual perversion, bloodshed, or anti-life practices, and a disruption of the divine balance between heaven and earth. This aligns with Genesis 18:20, which says, "The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grievous." But Jubilees makes it clear, the earth cried out because of what was being done. When Jubilees is brief in describing Sodom, it aligns with other writings like 1 Enoch 98:10, where the violent cities are condemned for greed, oppression, and bloodshed, and the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, which lists inhospitality, pride, rape, and mockery of the poor as Sodom's crimes. In the Qumran text, the Dead Sea Scrolls, where Sodom is linked with cosmic rebellion and anti-law energies. Sodom's fall is woven into the broader theme of covenantal separation. Abraham's line is called out from the corruption of the world. The earth must be cleansed from the desecration to become a vessel of sacred inheritance, just like things have happened previously, like with the flood. Sodom is the example of what happens when society aligns with Meshtema's forces. In Jubilees 16:6, it says, "They defile themselves and commit fornication in their flesh and work uncleanness on the earth." So Sodom's sins in Jubilees is not reduced to personal morality. It is an energetic crime, a violation of divine law, natural law, and cosmic resonance. It's about prideful disconnection from the source, disrespect for living earth, and choosing desecration over harmony. In chapter 17, Isaac is born and circumcised on the 8th day. The binding of Isaac happens. Meshtema tests Abraham's loyalty, asking God to see if he truly fears him. Abraham is willing, but God stops the act and provides a ram. Abraham is praised and the promise is reaffirmed. Jubilees 17:16 says, "You have not withheld your son from me." This becomes the ultimate model of faith and surrender. Chapter 18 and 19 include the legacies of Abraham and Sarah. Abraham makes a covenant feast after the test. Isaac's path is now protected. Sarah passes away and is buried in the cave of Machpelah. Abraham makes Eliezer swear not to take the Canaanite wife for Isaac, preserving bloodline purity. Rebekah is chosen for Isaac in answer to a divine sign. This affirms the importance of sacred unions and ancestral guardianship. In chapter 20, Abraham gives deep wisdom to his sons. Avoid pride, anger, and impurity. Observe sacred festivals and laws. Honor the Creator and walk in integrity. Remind them that everything is recorded in the heavenly tablets. This is a father's final map, a code of remembrance passed down. In chapter 21, Abraham dies peacefully, rejoicing in his legacy. Isaac is visited by the angel of the presence who instructs him, keep all offerings in the right way. Avoid blood, unclean food, and ritual impurity. Maintain holy times and rhythms. This chapter reinforces that the knowledge of sacred timing comes from the angelic realm. Everywhere you turn, it really stresses the importance of angelic and divine timing. In chapter 22, Isaac gives blessings to Jacob and Esau. Jacob is chosen, Esau is given a different earthly inheritance. Esau's anger is stirred, and this sets the stage for future enmity. The battle between two nations is born here, spirit versus flesh, alignment versus rebellion. In chapter 23, Isaac tells Jacob, there will be corruption, forgetting of the laws, and suffering. But in the end days, there will be a return to the path of righteousness, and they shall call upon my name, and I will be restored. This is spoken about in Jubilees 23:26-30. Longevity will return. Peace will be restored. The divine order will be reestablished as it was in Eden. This chapter is a prophetic roadmap from fall to restoration. Next, we have Jacob, Esau, and the descent into Egypt in Jubilees 24-50. Jacob and Esau begin to separate. After Isaac blesses Jacob after the deception over the birthright, as in Genesis, Esau becomes angry and marries foreign women against the covenantal order. Jacob leaves for Haran to find a wife. Isaac warns him to avoid Canaanite women. Calendar references mark Jacob's journey as divinely timed. This chapter emphasizes the importance of right union, land inheritance, and calendar-based divine movement. In chapter 5, Rebekah has a vision of two nations in her womb, one righteous, which is Jacob, and one wild, which is Esau. She prophetically blesses Jacob, confirming his destiny to rule and receive the sacred legacy. Esau is cut off from blessings from heaven. It confirms the divine choice of Jacob and begins the lineage separation between spirit-aligned and flesh-aligned nations. In chapter 26, Jacob dreams at Bethel and makes a vow to God. He sees the stairway to heaven, a true axis mundi. God promises him protection and land. Jacob is now fully sealed as the chosen line in this chapter. It mirrors Enoch's path of ascent and confirms Jacob's role as a bridge between heaven and earth. In chapters 27 through 29, Jacob meets Rachel and Leah and serves Laban and builds his family. The tribes of Israel are born. Laban tricks him multiple times, but Jacob prospers through divine blessing. Jacob honors clean animal laws, offers proper sacrifices, and observes heavenly appointed times. These chapters show the physical formation of Israel's tribes and how sacred law preserves blessings even in foreign lands. In chapter 30, Dinah is defiled by Shechem. And I, again, am so grateful that y'all are patient with me on these names because I always do try my best for you. Simon and Levi slaughter the city in revenge. Jacob is angry, fearing retaliation, but God protects him. While controversial, this event reinforces tribal justice and the duty to defend purity, though Jacob later rebukes their violence. In chapter 31, Isaac dies. Jacob and Esau bury him, and the division between their descendants is complete. Jacob equals spiritual inheritance. Esau equals physical temporal power. The scroll of lineage closes for Isaac. His legacy lives on in Jacob's line, now fully established. In chapter 32, Jacob builds Bethel as a sacred rite. He is renamed Israel, and he receives the heavenly tablets and the instructions for future generations. And he saw a vision in the night, and the angel of the presence said, I am the God of Abraham and Isaac. The land you tread will be yours forever. This chapter seals Jacob's name change and codifies his path into celestial record, a powerful alignment with divine purpose. In chapters 33 and 34, Jacob teaches his children the law of sexual purity, warning especially Reuben. Reuben lies with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and is rebuked and cursed. Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, dies and is mourned. This chapter reveals how even those in the chosen line must not violate divine order or lose their inheritance. In chapter 35, Rachel dies giving birth to Benjamin. Isaac also passes. The deaths of the mother of the tribes and the final patriarch signify a shift into the next generation's leadership. In chapter 36, the descendants of Esau are listed. The text warns not to intermingle with their line. These nations are said to become enemies of Israel and the law. This genealogical record is both historical and spiritual, identifying energetic and ethical divergence. In chapters 37 and 38, Joseph shares his dreams. His brothers become jealous and sell him into slavery. Reuben tries to save him, but Judah initiates the sell. This betrayal leads to the preservation of Israel, divine orchestration hidden in human pain, which is how it happens a lot. I do think that how many say that God's sense of humor is funny. And honestly, I think the same thing because there's so many who are risen up high above their station due to things like this. And it just goes to show that there is refining of gold in the fire of trauma and problems that happens that can later prove to be really significant. In chapters 39 through 41, Joseph rises in power due to his righteousness and divine favor. He interprets dreams, stores grains, and becomes a savior of the region. He marries Asenath and has Manasseh and Ephraim. Thank you for your patience again. Joseph reflects a messianic type, rejected by his brothers, yet becomes the one who saves them. In chapters 42 through 46, Jacob and his sons go to Egypt. Joseph reveals himself. Jacob blesses Ephraim and Manasseh, placing Ephraim above Manasseh prophetically. The tribes are established. Jacob sees the future. Ephraim will become the greater, often linked to the future return of the lost tribes. In chapters 47 through 50, Jacob blesses each son prophetically, echoing or expanding Genesis 49. He speaks of Levi as a priest, Judah as the kingly line, messianic foreshadowing, and Dan's serpent path. Many mystics link Dan to hidden watchers. And Joseph is blessed with abundance and glory. Jacob dies, and Joseph dies later in Egypt. and he made them swear to carry his bones out of Egypt. In chapter 50, we have final words and Sabbath law. There's a lot of emphasis on the Sabbath. The chapter opens with a strong commandment to honor the seventh day, the Sabbath. It is declared more holy than all other days, even above the festivals. Jubilees 51 says, "This commandment and testimony was written concerning the Sabbath days, that the children of Israel should observe it throughout their generations." The chapter gives a list of activities prohibited on the Sabbath, including preparing food or drink, carrying burdens or weapons, making fire or traveling for commerce, or performing labor or warfare. This is not just about rest. It's about aligning with divine rhythm and being in resonance with heaven. In Jubilees 57, it says, "Whoever profanes it shall surely die, and that soul shall be destroyed from the midst of his people." This may sound harsh, but it reflects the gravity of the Sabbath as a covenant sign, a cosmic appointment between the Creator and his people. Jubilees 59 says, "Blessed is the man who does this and keeps the Sabbath from profaning it. Those who honor the Sabbath will be remembered in the heavenly tablets, have their names written before the face of the Most High, and be guarded from the defilement and judgment." The commandments were written on heavenly tablets for all generations, not only for Israel, but for all who wish to join themselves to the covenant. This means this message is universal, not exclusive. Anyone who aligns with the divine law and rhythm is welcome into remembrance. At the end of this episode, I will include how to follow a divinely timed calendar according to this divine law. So if you're interested, stick around for that. As we close the scroll of Jubilees, what lingers is not just a covenant and calendar, but the echo of an older war, one fought not only in the flesh, but in the very fabric of creation. We've heard whispers already of the watchers who descended, of the giants born of unnatural unions, and the spirits that still roam. But there is more to that story, and it was once known. What if I told you that there exists a fragmented book, a lost record within the dust of ancient stones found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, a book that gives voice to the very giants themselves? This is not myth. This is the book of the giants. The voices of the Nephilim, their dreams, their fear of judgment, and the war they knew was coming. A tale too dangerous to remain in our Bibles, but not too far to be remembered. Let us now step through that forbidden veil into a story that was buried but not silenced. Though fragmented, what remains of this book is haunting, powerful, and deeply revealing, a record not just of the Nephilim's actions, but of their thoughts, dreams, and despair. These are the characters you should know. The giants, the Gibborim, are often named Oya, Haya, Mawe, and Gilgamesh. They speak in fragments, often describing nightmares or seeking help. Some are clearly intelligent and even philosophical, though they're corrupted. Their fathers, the fallen angels, are in there as well. Their names like Semjaza, Azazel, and Barakul appear in Enoch and are linked to forbidden knowledge. The only human they trust to meditate with heaven is Enoch. They ask him to speak on their behalf before the Most High. Here are translated fragments from the Aramaic scrolls. Fragment 1Q23 and 4Q530 include the dreams of doom. Then two of them had dreams, and they rose from their sleep and came to one another and told their dreams, and their dreams were similar. In fragment 4Q531, Mawe's vision, I saw a tablet in the vision which had writing on it, and it was immersed in water. When it emerged, all the writing had vanished except for 3 names. The tablet represents the record of their deeds. The immersion in water symbolizes the coming flood. 3 names remaining may represent a remnant or divine seed line being preserved, possibly Noah's family. Mawe mounted the air like strong winds and flew with his hands like eagles. And he saw Enoch and cried out to him to interpret the vision of their doom. This shows the giants were not fully ignorant. Some saw understanding and mercy. There was also dreams of Oya and Haya. They were twin giants. 2 of them had visions in their sleep. They rose and told each other their dreams, and their visions were alike. One said, I saw a large stone, and all earth was written upon it. Then fire came and destroyed all but one part. Another fragment says, I saw a great tree that was uprooted. All its branches were cut down. Fragment 4Q530 says, yes, but the response is firm and final. Enoch acts as the intercessor, but the Most High refuses to change the decree. A fragment from Qumran 4Q530 through 534 says, a copy of the second tablet that Enoch sent. You will not escape judgment. Your petition will not be granted. So even though they pled with Enoch and God, it was denied. No peace will be granted. No forgiveness. Their deeds had corrupted the earth and defied cosmic law. The judgment will stand. They must die, and their spirits will become wandering, unclean spirits, as confirmed in Jubilees 10. This is echoed in 1 Enoch 14 through 16, where the Watchers also plead for forgiveness through Enoch, and God tells him not even to speak on their behalf anymore. Their fall is sealed. In 1 Enoch 15, 3 through 7, it says, you have left the high, holy, and eternal heaven, and lain with daughters of men, and begotten giants. You will have no peace. Enoch becomes not just a scribe, but a messenger of judgment. Yet he still records their visions and their terror, which means there was a human witness to their desperation. What were the giants hoping for? This was perhaps the most heartbreaking part to me. From what we can gather, their hopes were to be spared. The dreams they have reveal fear of death, especially annihilation. They plead through Enoch, hoping by showing remorse or requesting interpretation they might be granted mercy. Several fragments mention the giants not understanding their visions and turning to Enoch for explanation. This suggests they hoped for a path forward, or at least to make sense of their doom. The imagery of tablets, stones, names, and trees may indicate a deep desire not to be erased, to have their names endure, or to find a place in the divine record. There is no record of them repenting in the same way humans were invited to, possibly because their very essence, their hybrid DNA, was a breach of the fabric of creation. But they knew what was coming, and they did hope, even if faintly, for some sort of intervention, a delay, or a remembrance. Instead, they were slain by the archangels, Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel. Their spirits are not destroyed, though, as we've discussed. They become the unclean spirits or demons that roam the earth. It aligns with Enoch and Jubilees 10, where Mastema is allowed to retain 1/10 of the spirits. These are the evil spirits that plague the earth to this day, the echoes of the Nephilim. This text may have been buried because it humanized the giants, showing their fear, regret, and longing. It preserved pre-flood technology, astronomy, and dimensional knowledge. It exposes the deep roots of spiritual warfare long before Mount Sinai or Rome. It challenges simple good versus evil dualism and shows that even the corrupted ones sought return. The descriptions of the giants are sparse but powerful. They were massive, ravenous, and violent. They devoured all the fruits of men's labor, then turned on animals, and eventually cannibalized each other in Enoch 7. In the Manichaean version, some giants are named Gilgamesh and Humbaba, indicating cultural memory from Mesopotamia. The Qumran fragment suggests they could dream, speak with clarity, and even ascend into the skies, implying intellect, not just brute force. Some were clearly more conscious than others, especially Mawe, Oya, and Haya, who appeared as sensitive or visionary figures. The texts also show the giants were divided amongst themselves. Fragments show internal conflict. Then Oya said to Haya, his brother, they argued with each other. Some giants believed they could overcome fate. Others believed judgment was sealed. This reflects a split between the rebellious giants who wanted to fight heaven and those who felt sorrow or fear and sought redemption. This internal division mirrors the ancient tension between obedience and defiance, even within corrupted beings. Evidence suggests that this text was originally one scroll in a much larger narrative, possibly linked to the Book of Enoch, the Book of the Watchers, the Book of Noah, or the Book of the Parables. In some ancient traditions, the Book of the Giants came before the flood chapters of Enoch as a kind of interlude or direct testimony from the Nephilim themselves. In other words, this was once considered canon alongside the earliest layers of the angelic and human history. The Manichaean version adds cosmic context. The Book of the Giants was preserved more fully in Manichaean text found in Turfan, modern China. These versions mix in Zoroastrian cosmology, light versus dark duality, and spiritual evolution in celestial realms. In this version, the giants become forces of chaos that must be dissolved so light can return to its source. There is more emphasis on reincarnation and cosmic restoration. This reveals how the story of the giants transcended culture and religion, surviving even outside Israelite tradition. Their destruction wasn't vengeance. It was energetic purification. From the Enochic and Jubilees view, the giants carried corrupted ether in their blood, disrupting Earth's balance. Their destruction rebalanced frequencies between Earth and heaven. This wasn't just a war of flesh, it was a cleansing of the spiritual architecture of the world. Some traditions suggest that even after their fall, the Nephilim or their watchers left behind distorted versions of heavenly teachings. These became the root of false priesthoods, sorcery, corrupted temple orders, and earth-based empires. In this view, the giants became more than myth. They became the foundation of human systems built in rebellion to heaven. This may explain why their legacies persist in pyramid systems, divine kingship claims, ancient bloodline mythologies, and astronomical cults with calendar corruption. Entire sections are missing from all surviving versions, though. Scholars believe we lost a list of more giants' names and deeds, a record of Enoch's full second message, possibly responses from heaven or angels, and a final ritual or sign sealing the giants' fate. In Genesis 6:4, it says there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. The little phrase, and also after that, is one of the most critical keys. It tells us that the Nephilim existed before the flood, but somehow giants reappear afterward, like in the days of Canaan in Numbers 13:33, Og of Bashan in Deuteronomy 13:11, and found a bed 13.5 foot long. And with Goliath and his kin in 1 Samuel 17 and 2 Samuel 21. So yes, the giant phenotype persisted, though diminished. How could it have survived? Here are some possibilities that I looked into. They might interest you or not, but I did think that it would be interesting because we do see people that are like extremely tall. And even though they're extremely tall, it's still minuscule compared to the titan size of the Nephilim. Anyways, I digress. Some traditions suggest that the wives of Noah's sons may have carried Nephilim genetic material, diluted but real. This would explain why giants show up shortly after the flood. The line of Ham, especially through Canaan, produces many giant clans. These women may not have known that they carried or may have been chosen to preserve a thread of that power. Another way is through genetic sleeper traits. Nephilim traits may have skipped generations only to re-emerge at certain times. These could include unusual height or strength, enhanced perception or intuition, sometimes twisted into sorcery, dominant bloodline markers, or unexplained immunity or biological differences. Remember, the Nephilim were part angelic. Their essence may not express like human genetics. It could wake up under any energetic triggers or generational cycles. Another way is through hybridized bloodlines. Some kings, rulers, and secret orders interbred with known giant clans. Many ancient cultures claimed divine right through giant or god blood descent. These groups kept tall stature, elite control, and preserved ancient knowledge. This may be the root of royal bloodlines, blue blood claims, and even certain ruling families today. While modern tall people are small compared to ancient giants, there are still signs of lingering Nephilim traits. Extreme height of 7 to 9 plus feet is not just genetic, but possibly a dormant echo. High intuitive capacity could be a watcher blood remnant with risk of misalignment. Rare blood types like Rh negative and such sometimes are linked to a non-standard ancestry. And there's unusual growth hormone regulations, which are a physical marker of giant genes. And there's this odd obsession with certain bloodlines. Elites may be preserving hybrid lines knowingly. So are tall people today Nephilim? Not necessarily, and this is important. Height alone doesn't determine spiritual origin. Some with giant DNA may be healing it, redeeming it, or even guarding it properly. Others may feel tormented, out of place, or overly noticed, as if their body remembers something Earth no longer speaks aloud. It's also possible that some souls today incarnate into these bodies to complete the karma or memory of the fallen, but now with the chance to align with divine will instead of rebellion. So yes, the DNA lingers, but so does the choice. The flood erased the form, but not the frequency. The giant blood still pulses in certain veins, but it is how that blood is directed that determines alignment. Some of that energy wants to return to harmony. some still wars against the divine blueprint. And so when the voices of the giants, long silenced by fire and flood, rises again, not to claim dominion, but to remind us what happens when divine law is broken and when sacred boundaries are crossed. May we walk forward not in fear, but in wisdom, honoring the memory, guarding the gate, and choosing alignment with the harmony they once defied. Now, for what I promised about following the divine calendar outlined in these texts we've been diving into. Here are the steps to follow, and I've also linked a PDF near the episode on my website by the episode description that has the proper calendar on it if you would like to print it and follow it as well. It starts in March. In the near future, I will be covering the festivals that's in it that used to and are still celebrated to this day. That way, if you want to understand what all that's about and participate, you can as well. Step 1 is understanding the foundation. The calendar of the Jubilees preserves a 364-day solar calendar based on divinely ordered weeks, not lunar months like Babylonian calendar that later replaced it. Step 2 is beginning the year at the spring equinox. Jubilees 6:34-38 says, "And all the children of Israel will forget, and will walk according to the months of the Gentiles, and there will be great wickedness." According to Jubilees, the true new year begins on the 4th day of the week, Wednesday, that falls on or immediately after the spring equinox, the day of the sun, moon, and stars were created, in Jubilees 2:8. Here's how you do this. You determine when the spring equinox occurs, around March 20th or 21st. You count forward to the next Wednesday. That is day 1 of the new year, and you begin your 52-week count from there. This calendar keeps the Sabbaths and festivals in perfect alignment year after year. Step 3 is observe the original 7 festivals. According to the Jubilees, there are 7 main festivals that were ordained before Sinai, even kept by the angels. Number 1 is the Passover, which is the 14th day of the first month, always on a Tuesday. The significance is liberation and new beginning. The next is the Feast of the Unleavened Bread. This is the 15th through the 21st of the first month. It's for purification and the journey from Egypt. Next is the Feast of Weeks. It's the 15th of the third month. It reminds us of the covenant renewal, the Torah, and the Spirit. Next is the Feast of Trumpets. It's the first day of the 7th month. It celebrates awakening and announcement. The next one is the Day of Atonement. It's the 10th day of the 7th month. It celebrates cleansing and alignment. After that's the Feast of the Tabernacle, which is the 15th through the 21st of the 7th month. It celebrates dwelling with the divine. The last is the 8th day assembly, the 22nd of the 7th month. It celebrates completion and return to source. All of these are tied to specific weeks and Sabbaths, not lunar shifts. The moon is never used to calculate them in Jubilees. Step 4 is restoring the Sabbath as a cornerstone. In Jubilees 50, the Sabbath is exalted above all feasts. It's the weekly divine portal. In Jubilees 2:31, it said, "And the Creator of all things blessed it. But he did not sanctify all peoples and nations to keep the Sabbath, but Israel alone." But remember, Israel in this context refers to those who keep the covenant, not a bloodline. You honor the Sabbath by lighting a candle or blessing the 7th day, resting from commerce, labor, and technology, returning your heart to divine rhythm, and giving thanks and reading sacred words. Step 5 is detached from Babylonian and lunar systems. The current Hebrew calendar in use today follows a Babylonian-style lunar calendar, which adds leap months, shifts festivals across weekdays, was not used by Enoch, Noah, Abraham, or even Moses initially. The Book of Jubilees warns that this will lead to error, missed appointments with God, and confusion in Jubilees 6:36-38. So the path is clear. Step off the spinning Babylonian wheel and return to solar, Sabbath-anchored, angelically kept calendar. And that is the end of this episode. Next week, we will be discussing the Tablets of Destiny. Until next time, may your path be aligned, your gnosis be clear, and the veil be ever thin. The scroll remains open. Thank you for all the love and support. Much love and positive vibes.